Hello and welcome. Happy Gregorian New Year's Eve. This is Zish, Visionary Life Hacks, here to connect, here to inspire, here to be the change. If you're watching the live, welcome. If you're watching the replay, welcome. And if you share this, thank you for sharing. Okay, so just got asked a really great question. I always say to you folks, like, if you want to ask a question, drop them in the comments, or feel free to DM me if you're on Facebook. This is going to go up onto YouTube. And so I was asked the question, I've always been considering getting a Rife machine, but now I'm learning about the Tesla machines and what is the difference? You know, should I be looking at the Tesla machine? Should I be looking at the Rife machine? Or maybe I should be looking at some other machine. And the answer is, once you have dialed into the antique technology, from my experience, and this all started when I was learning how to make the anti-nano triangle, and what is this anti-nano triangle, and you know, what am I trying to build? And I was learning from Tony Pantalleresco, and a lot of it was going over my head because he'd kind of go off and talk about George Carlin, and he'd talk about his tee up, and you know, and you're just there going, well, what actually is this, and what gauge wire do I need, and what kind of indicator flasher do I need? And you'd have all these different questions, and those videos were from 2014. But I ended up on this bit of a journey, and then I ended up asking questions like, what is magnetism, and who is Nikola Tesla? I already knew who Nikola Tesla was, but really getting into the minutiae of who is Nikola Tesla. So I ended up going back in time and, you know, go, oh, do I really have to make this anti-nano triangle? And then I find the antique technology, and I'm like, oh, here we go. I thought it was Victorian, but it's kind of like, I started to go back then to like the late 1800s, kind of even went back a bit further when I was researching things like the heirloom, went back to kind of Napoleonic times. And so with the nanosynthetic biology, I can kind of blame that, and this thing called entrainment is what I'm learning today. Entrainment. It's quite serious, quite nefarious, worth doing a bit of investigation into that word, and ELF related waves and things like that. Think the invisible rainbow and the works of Ilana Freeland. So then going back in time and then finding kind of specific researchers. Hi Edmund, hey brother, Christ is King. And going back in time and then kind of finding some interesting human beings with their own laboratories, like modern day Teslas, all open source education, teaching people how to really get into the nuts and bolts of Rife's technology, the original Lakhovsky technology. Now, I think there was a certain point where they hadn't found the original Lakhovsky device down in Italy. There was a guy called Marco Kulig that did an amazing video presentation of this some guy called Bruno in Italy, and they found this original kind of Lakhovsky machine, and it's a wonderful story. And then they produced the original schematic. So I'm not even going to say if you were engineering mindset, you know, if you just had the will to learn, and you wanted to build this thing, they actually created the original documentation from the original exact model that they'd found. It was like, it was untouched. And they were able to create the schematics. So if you had an engineering friend, or you wanted to learn with an engineering friend, you could build this thing. And I was learning about that at the time. I got the original schematics. But up until that point, people had already made, and this is, I'm going to get into the Rife technology in a minute. People had already made Lakhovsky multi-wave oscillators, but they weren't correctly, hey Edmund, they weren't correctly made, because when the likes of Paul Babcock and some of these great human beings out of Washington State finally got the original schematics, and there was already Lakhovsky devices made, we found out later after the fact that a lot of those devices were made the wrong way. They should have been made unbalanced. And so, because you could go on Etsy and find all these like these crappy digital things. And I really want people to know that I never jumped into like fake spooky devices, fake Rife technology. I came into this knowing that I got the food right, knowing that I was getting the natural medicine right. And I kind of think it's always a continuous progression. You know, I remember doing the raw foods, getting into live food, living foods, alkaline lifestyle. And then essentially just kept breaking free of each one, and, you know, got really into the fermented foods and the Western A price. And then with that accumulation of all that knowledge that I'd gleaned as a father over the last 22 years, kind of like was taking all the little bits out of each thing and just living that lifestyle to the fullest back to ancestral wisdom. So then, and I've been doing the same with the supplements and the lifestyle and the natural medicines. And then essentially then I was like, well, there's something missing, this technology. And I was meeting all these individuals with like these BCX Rife machines and this Rife machine, hi Tanya, and all these different Rife machines and stuff. And I was like, well, what is this stuff? Well, I was learning how to build this little 300-pound kind of, you know, anti-nano triangle, an anti-nano bucket, which I was just making it myself and getting things wrong and making amazing ones. And then I had people going, well, that doesn't look so attractive because they're used to all these shiny objects. And Tolkien said it beautifully. He said, not all that glitters is gold, and not all who wander are lost. And so I was like, I don't really care what this thing looks like. Does it work? And so we were making the but even with the anti-nano triangles and the buckets, I was more into where I was with the original antique technology, because this was like 120 years strong. It worked. You know, they don't build things like they used to. And I was like, this is awesome. And eventually some women showed up and they had magnetic chests and they had spoons all over their chests. And this lady commissioned me to like go and build the anti-nano bucket. So I did that, ended up helping a lot of people in Israel with the anti-nano bucket, and that was interesting. But in amongst that, I met some great human beings with open source wisdom, where they were sharing with me about like how to make LED, like red light therapy affordable, because they were kind of a bit sick and tired of all the fake Rife technology. And these were people that were one of the first people over in Washington State to bring Qigong and Chinese medicine into the West, into Spokane, Washington. And so I was quite interested in this, and they recommended a few books, and they were showing me all these technologies and how they were kind of going like, is it possible to even make something that's as good as Qigong? And they made this Qi machine. This was like I think it was like the 60s or 70s, you know. And I was finding it really fascinating, and learning about vril and the importance of ether, and where did ether go, and why was all of the science as we know compartmentalized, and what happened to the food supply, what happened to the medicine supply, what happened to the technology. Now, I've known about Wilhelm Reich since the 90s, and I remember my friend, he was like building this orgone chamber up on in his house, and another guy was building this cloudbuster in the 90s, and we were learning about the angels not playing the harp and all that kind of stuff. And through that, I've managed to meet human beings that have decommissioned the harp in Alaska, and met people that were part of that group of children that were MK Ultra'd and built the 51 harps around the world. And so I've not just woken up during Corona and gone, ooh, you know, I've just been on this, I think since 1986, I lost faith in what we call here in Britain the National Health Service. Because I was like, well, 1 minute, my grandmother was okay today, and then she's gone into hospital, and now she's dead. And then I got given some sort of vaccine, and I came up in an allergic reaction. And when I think about a lot of the experiences that I had before I was like really kind of had my own voice, and, wasn't going along with the family doctor. And because they were, in all fairness, he was a family doctor. He'd read your pulse. He was a great human being. I have nothing against him. But I kind of started to lose faith because my favourite human being died. And I was like, well, 1 minute, she was all right just a minute ago, and now she's dead. How did that happen? And as I started to get into these, so I started to kind of went a bit more internal and kind of started to lose faith with the system as we know it. It could be school. It was like that whole idea of being sent somewhere. So I kind of went in. And I'd read lots of books up until that point, and I think that injection that they gave to me at age 10 just was almost like, I'll never forget it, it was like, I'm done with this. I'm done with it. At age 10, I was like done with this, like, I was done with the home invasions. And up until that point, I'd even had like hi Chris, I'd even had strange experiences with cats, being like experiencing healing through cats. And the greatest healing that I ever really experienced was from my grandmother, and my grandmother was unconditional, and it was really just her way. It was like the way she would pray, the way that she did things, her kindness, her unconditional wisdom. And I think ever since then, I'd had to go and bury my nana at age 10, and it was quite a strange time for me actually at age 10. But from that point, from age 10 to 16, I was kind of like what happened? And then I met the mother of my children at 16, and then we both came together, and then we had animals and pets, and we had an amazing vet and he was into homeopathy and acupuncture, and we started to see how there was definitely a disparity between the conventional vet and the vet that was a conventional vet, but that was a great vet that was expanding. He was expanding. Well, my name actually means pride of, Chris. So I don't ever really want to be, I'm kind of in this life wanting to aspire towards courage. I'm aspiring towards courage. Because my name means pride of grandmother. So pride of lion, Khan, is my name, actually, given to me by my granny, who I really love to this very day. And she was such a great human being, so creative and so inspiring. And her life was cut short, and it was to do with like things in her food supply. Because she'd come from a very rich culture. The ingredients that she would have got in her so-called poor country would have been very rich, because the ingredients would have been untainted, and the focus wouldn't have been on this, but would have been focused on just, again, we're back to that open source. It's just like this is how we chew our tobacco. This is how we do things. And there was no conflict of interest because, food supply hadn't really been weaponized in places like Afghanistan up until about maybe the 80s. It was still pretty unadulterated. Maybe after 9/11, we probably see a lot of adulteration today and a lot more intervention from the so-called Western world, which is like, you look at it and it's like, well, how have we progressed? When I go and look at a street market in Afghanistan in the 80s, like, how have we actually progressed when you see that people with less material possessions, that have strong families, lots of children, very happy, and they might not have lots of material possessions, but they seem to have a different kind of wealth, don't they? Whereas we seem to be in this Western world so focused on, you look at all the, like today I've been learning about, I'm not getting away from the point of what I'm talking about today, because I think it's all relative, and this is always off the cuff, and I'm like, now I'm learning about entrainment. And if you go onto Google today, which is getting more and more harder to find things of value, and you type in the word entrainment, now you've got the stupid AI there going, are you sure you don't mean entertainment? And it's like, no, I mean entrainment. Stop trying to put words into my head. And I'm a little bit kind of pissed off today, really, when I'm learning about what entrainment is. And I'm like, well, if you're not pissed off, you're not paying attention. And I'm like, wow, this is like really quite sinister and nefarious. Like, why are there children? Since you start to look, there's a certain point in time, and you look at all technology, and it kind of comes back to what I was just saying to you now about Reich. So we had Wilhelm Reich in the 90s, and we're up there learning about Wilhelm Reich when I'm like 15, 16, and and I'm there with, and I'm there learning about this stuff, and I'm learning about this guy called Wilhelm Reich, and then you can watch the song there's an amazing song by a lady called Kate Bush, which you probably all know, Kate Bush, but there's a song, I think it's Running Up That Hill, and it's the story about Wilhelm Reich, and it's really quite sad. And Kate Bush has been quite an important musician since I was a little boy. Her New Model Army and other songs like that. A lot of Sufi music, percussion music. But Kate Bush was like one of those sounds that I'd hear all the time as a little hooligan little kid, as a boy. So it's quite fitting that Kate was a visionary that made this song called Running Up That Hill, and it's all about Wilhelm Reich. Now, when you look at all these great human beings and you start to look into things like, well, what actually is this documentary, The Truth About Cancer, and why should I care? And why should I be like concerned about saying the word cancer or the word parasite? Why is that so offensive to the mainstream? Why is that so offensive to the algorithms? This probably isn't going to serve me very well saying that word, but why did somebody have to make a documentary, this is just my opinion, called The Truth About Cancer? When you love somebody, when you love someone and then they're taken away from a cancer, and then you start to realize years later as an adult that, oh shit, my mum was dying from that cancer, my grandmother was dying from that cancer. She went in there with a diagnosis, and it seemed to me that it was the treatment and all that time, when I'm starting to learn then from the unconditional Louise L. Hay, the unconditional Wayne Dyer, that actually a lot of this stuff can be fixed with the mindset alone. And you might be like, oh, Z, she's going a little bit new age now. But it's like, well, no, not really, because when they get into your emotions and you've trusted this doctor, and this doctor gives something to you, and it comes with a heavy burden of proof that you really believe in because they're your family doctor, and you've got nowhere else that you can ask, and everybody else around you is in that same mindset of grooming that kind of mindset, and you're there, but you don't break free of that idea that's been put onto you with so much emotion, and you've gone in there, and then suddenly this element of false evidence appearing real becomes your evidence in reality, and everyone around you is in that same sentiment, but you don't have that strength or will to break free of that, then you could probably die from that alone. But if you are able to break free from that and go, well, actually, this is only his opinion, this is only her opinion, maybe I should get a second opinion. Then you go out there, and then and then you find all this different knowledge. Well, what is this thing called frankincense? Who was this human being called Raymond Rife? Why did this man called Raymond Rife die? Like, how did he actually die? How did Wilhelm Reich die? It's really quite strange how they all died a kind of similar way. Why is this? Is this a conspiracy? What is a conspiracy theory? Why did the term conspiracy theory, why was it created? Where did this word come from? Surely the King of England marrying 9 wives and killing the ones he didn't like, surely that's a conspiracy. What happened to JFK? Wasn't that a conspiracy? No, it was a lone shooter, Zish. What happened to 9/11? Well, 9/11 was done. I've got off now, Zish. Zish, you were supposed to be talking about the difference between a Rife machine and a Tesla machine, and do I want a Rife machine or do I want a Tesla machine? So let's just hone it back. Let's hone it back. But it's quite important, actually, because a lot of this technology was once there in the foot flow of your grandparents, and it was there, available. And if the wars hadn't happened, it would be available today in your... Well, maybe we wouldn't even have a national health service. Maybe we would just still have the same... whatever it was before the National Health Service. So you look at the city of Bath, and the city of Bath was this big round city, and it was like a homeopathic central. And you go to America, and there was 6,000 homeopathic colleges, and they're probably there in Australia. You can certainly see that it was in Germany. You can see they were, you know, like these machines were used by the naturopath, by the chemist. They were used by the naturopath, they were in the chemists, they were commercial, they were private. You had these big, giant, large mahogany units, diathermy units. They were working with high frequency. The doctor was a chemist. He was a homeopath. He might have prescribed you a bone broth, a meat stew. Go and use some Carlsbad salts. Go and have some charcoal. Go and have an Epsom salt bath. You know, maybe you need some myrrh and frankincense. You know, the doctor back then was a real physician. He was living by that strong oath of Hippocrates. And so in that time, when you had people like Tesla and Lakhovsky and Raymond Rife, and they were all under the umbrella of ether, then they were all coming from a place of truth and a place of service, and things were being built to last. So then when I've gone back in time and I found the antique Tesla machines. Oh, do you want to meet my new friend? This is our new family member. Her name's Bobo. Her name's Bobo. She's our new family member. And she's a real character. There she is. Say hello, Bobo. Bobo, say hello. And she's all natural. She's been digging. Have you been digging? Oh, I can smell the dirt on you. You've been digging, haven't you? You're a terrier, aren't you? Have you been digging? Have you been digging? Bobo, 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 Bobo. There she is. She's under there somewhere. She's all organic and homeopathic, and she's on all the herbs, and she's on raw. Her daily feast is like raw meat. She's on raw meat, isn't she? Daily raw meat. She adds the odd rabbit ears and chicken feet, and I can smell. She smells all like, she smells of the terroir, the earth. This is her favourite, to be on my shoulder like this. She loves this. Don't you, Boo-Boo? Boo-Boo. Boo-Boo. Bobo-matic. Oh, Bobo-matic. I'm going to let you go now, Bobo. I've got to stay focused. Daddy Zeesh is going off on all these 9/11 tangents and conspiracy tangents, and people just want to know about, what should I choose? Should I choose the Rife machine? Should I choose a Tesla machine? Should I choose a Lakhovsky machine? The answer is, choose them all. Once you go into, and Chris can validate this, once you're into something, once you've got into the roots of the antique Tesla technology, you don't stop. Seriously, you end up collecting like strange things like this with rare earth minerals inside of them, and you know, you start to collect, you start to get into it. One of my engineers got me hooked on all these induction coils, and then I started collecting spark gaps and started to collect these diathermy machines, and you don't stop. Like, if you're really into it, you're like, it becomes an obsession. I collect the literature, and then I'm like, well, who is Rife, and what is all this thing about needing a Hertz frequency? Why do I need a Hertz frequency? But the answer, if cash is right, so we're at a point right now where the financial situation is changing, and there's going to be a reset. And that reset is a time right now where if we go to a digital pound, a digital dollar, and the CBDCs and all that come in, it's really important to have tangible assets and things that you can touch, things like precious metals, silver, gold, platinum, maybe your own property, maybe your own piece of land. You know, if you want to get a rebounder and you've been planning to get one in 2026, I'd buy it today, because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You might wake up tomorrow. This is not fear. It's definitely moving in that way. You see people trying to buy a motorbike. They're like, why do you want that money? Someone trying to buy a bit of silver. Why do you want that money? What's my money? What's it got to do with you? But it's really important that you have tangible assets. And so for me personally, I'm like, okay, I'm into this Tesla machine. I think it's amazing. But what's a true Rife machine? And then you're hearing, and then a lot of these, so like when money for a rich person, more so, you don't want to wake up tomorrow and be on UBI. But that's what's going to happen to you that's got more money than you need. But the poorer person that, you know, is not so much poorer, but the human being that's struggling right now to make ends meet, but they genuinely see that they got the food right, they got the natural medicine right, they could do with a bit of technology. And they're at a point, well, what do I choose? Do I choose the Rife machine? Do I choose the Tesla machine? Or do I choose the Lakhovsky machine? Now, the Lakhovsky machine, if that's the sort of human being you're in, that point of like, you've just about got a little bit of money that you can invest, and you want to invest it into something tangible, then the Lakhovsky isn't even on your radar right now. But if you're somebody that's got a lot of wealth and abundance, and you're concerned about, you know, CBDCs and UBI, and you just want to convert the energy into tangible things, and you're like, well, I might as well just build the clinic now. Well, then I would go for all three. But not all Lakhovskys are created equal, not all Rifes are created equal, and not all Tesla technology is created equal. For example, I could go today and buy a high-frequency violet ray from Ukraine or China for like 50, 60 quid. Now, I have a friend that's using one, and they're getting results with it. Me personally, I've never been interested in that, because for me, I'm like, well, if this thing is from 120 years ago and it works, well, I'm going to go with that. I've never, hands on my heart, I've never ever bought the £80 machine. Even when I was doing my early research, I've seen people talking about them, and I wasn't interested in it. I just genuinely was not interested in that. I wanted to go back to the mechanics. Now, with the Rife technology, a lot of that stuff is overpriced, and it's sold under things like Seraphy, and you've got all these, like, you know, Kundalini awakening people, and then you've got all these like alien kind of goofy guru people. I'm connected to the Pleiadians, and there's a lot of strange stuff out there right now. And you're just like, I just want a Rife machine. And I'd stay away from things like Spooky 2, BCX, Beamer, even Hulda Clark zappers today. I can tell you the reasons why. If you want to ask the reasons why, I can do another video on that. But I'd stay away from a lot of the PEMF devices, Beamer, terahertz, PEMF hybrid models, things like that. When it comes to the Rife technology, we have got a friend that's got the open source research that you can build your own if you want to. You haven't got much money, but you've got the acumen and you want to build something. There's Rife wizards out there. They've passed on now, but there's people that have been carrying that torch. But you can pick up a decent Rife machine for about, I got one recently for about $800. And if you would like one, just let me know, and I can link you to where you can get a decent Rife machine for about $800. I don't make my bread and butter from the Rife technology. I make my bread and butter from the antique Tesla technology. So I've got machines, and, you know, I've got like antique Tesla machines. The Lakhovsky machines, there's only 2 people in the world that make them. There's this dodgy company called Meditech, and a lot of people that claim to be experts with this technology. I was listening to one the other day, and I'm like, why is he talking about argon gas? There are no noble gases in the original antique technology. Right, so let me say this to you as well. If money's an object, and you're like, I don't know which one to go for, Rife machine, Tesla machine, Lakhovsky, all the technology does the same thing if it's true analog technology. And the reason being is because there's no digital interface. There's no digital interface. The waves go like this, through. So you're here today hearing all this stupidity with 440 hertz, 44 hertz. Oh, I'm a Lyme's disease. This is the frequency I need. Oh, I'm a this disease. And I don't even think any of those diseases even exist. What I think that we should really start to look at is things like What actually is Morgellons? What is the invisible rainbow? What is the heirloom? Who is Alana Freeland? Do the research. What things happened when this flu happened? How is our technology that we've got in our hands been weaponized? Where did it come from? Where did the internet come from? Where did your drone come from? Where did your camera come from? Where did your pager come from? Where did all this technology come from? Has it been in the hands of the military? Really look at things like that. Zoom out of it. Ask yourselves then, look at the bigger picture. Go out, look at the internet of everything, the internet of nano things, the wide body area network. Destroy it all. Think to yourself, what can I do? Think about the geoengineering. Think about the 5G, the 6G, the 7G, the 10G, quantum AI, all that stuff. Don't be in fear. Tool yourself up and think, what can I use to disrupt this technology? Don't reduce yourself to a diagnosis. You are not a diagnosis. Viruses don't exist. This is a little bit controversial. Read the works of Dr. Tom Cowan. Seems to me like we're showing the symptoms of these sorts of things from entrainment, from ELF waves and all this technology, bombardment, you know, messing around with the Schumann resonance of the Earth, Hadron Collider, HARPS, dirty electricity, all that kind of stuff. Get into the true Rife technology, Bedini. Get into the true Lakhovsky. Get into the true technology, find the true technology. I'm connected to the true technology. I've got the true Tesla machines. Now, the beautiful thing is you don't reduce yourself to a diagnosis, because the true technology, like the old antique technology, is working between 110 and 220. Now, if you go to a modern electrician, even a Tesla electrician, and this is where I'm to with it, they're like, well, 110s for America, 220s for Europe. Well, I'm like, well, how come my German machine or my English machine says 110, 220? They'll still tell you the same thing, because how I look at that then is, if you look at somebody like Eric Dollard, who was, hi Tanya, who was a young man, trained like he was a wizard as a little boy, making crystal radios, hacking into the ether. The men in black show up, take him to General Electric. He's involved in things like the Integratron. He's a wizard, a genius, making naval grade technology. I've got some of his stuff here, making this amazing stuff. And the parts are difficult to get today. But what's my point to that? There's a point that I'm making about, can somebody help me? I've just lost my trail of thought. You've got people like Dollard, the OGs, they're making the true technology, they're building it, they're making it the right way, they're all open source, they're wanting us to get it, they're telling us the problems, the challenges, things haven't changed in over 20, 30, 40 years. What's the problem with that, Zish? What's the good of, what? Yes, so they even knew that through their education, they had to go into San Francisco, lose themselves in the wild shrub, and unlearn everything that they thought they knew. Now, Sir Alan Savory says, what is science? Now, most science today, and this is the problem when you get all these elite truthers showing up in their little white coats. Hi, I'm Dr. Anna Ramthacult Mahalacia. I'm the nano whistleblower. Listen to me. One hand, she's telling you that the technology doesn't work on the nano. The next moment, she's got her little pay piggy coming in from Jeffrey Berwick. 1111, buy my Tesla machine. You know, 111111. You know, cosmic numbers, 1111. Thing only costs $500 to make if you had the acumen to build it. But she's the nano whistleblower from the Ramtha cult. Listen to me in my white coat. White coat. It's still a white coat. You didn't fool us. It's still a white coat. You know, and so, but they're there like, you know, there as these experts. And it's like, well, what have you actually broken free from? At least with people like Eric, they're there. They've not changed. Everything's open source. They're in the desert. They're tapping into the Earth's transmitter. They're doing really good stuff. These folks could make like truly devastating things for humanity, but they're not. They're focusing on things that are beneficial to humanity. So what I always say is, like, when that Rife man died, when that Reich man died, when that Tesla man had all his patents stolen, that's why patents aren't a good idea. Open source is the way to go. When those patents were stolen, who took them? Where did they go? Then war happens, War 2 happens, religion becomes the enemy. We now know who the enemy is. Don't believe the hype. Don't believe who the enemy truly was. They don't really teach you that in school, do they? Who the real enemy was. But then you can do your research into that. Maybe read some specific books that are a little bit outside of the current mainstream. You know, find out who was the greatest historian in Britain and why are they now the most vilified historian in Britain. Do a bit of research. Break free of these stupid lizard people Ikes. Find out who inspired. Buy a David Icke book. Read who his resources are and go straight to the knowledge. Like your William Cooper, Behold the Pale White Horse. Your Eustace Mullins. You know, go to the true sources of that information. Find the knowledge and run with that. And then you find out the truth of, like, well, why did they just decimate loads of parts of Germany that was heavily invested in this technology? Well, and then suddenly Christianity and certain religions become the enemy of these cults that then bring in the gods of the New Age. Suddenly then you've got your Rife machine and it's all glitzy with the flower of life, or is it the flower of death? And then you've got these people there as the Ashtar Command in their nylon, buy my alien wear and buy my zeolites and buy my spooky 2 device that is made in China. And you now know that data is the new gold. And there's, you know, you start to look at these things and you're like, well, how does this actually interact with the nano and then the synthetic biology? And if I'm breathing in all this nano and now I'm in this cult of truth, you know, and I'm there with all my Ikes and my doctor this that appeared during COVID, and I'm amongst all these truth doctors, and I'm with the Berricks and all these different people and the wolves. There's so many wolves. They're even called wolf in sheep's clothing, and they're telling you to take nanosilver and ivermectin and bendazole or whatever it is, and they're telling you to take diatomaceous earth, and they're there like these new, you know, there's so many people you can put into this whole category. It's crazy. People that I knew and I thought they were for us, and then they start pushing nanosilver and pushing C60 and pushing like methylene blue and pushing zeolites, and then you start to realize how all of these things interact and turn you into a conductor. So it's no wonder people, you know, get triggered. Like yesterday I posted something on David Icke and it was so truthful. It was only 5 minutes by Alan Watts, and this human was like spurging out and they were like short circuiting and they were really struggling to cope. I was like, if you don't get this 5 minutes, you're never going to get it. It was so coherent and so great and so much minutia. I wasn't seeking to like destroy their coping mechanism, but you know, a wise man said you can lead the horse to water, but sometimes you have to shoot the horse. And it's like, well, why? Like, you know, if there's a technology out there, it was taken away and then it was brought back to us. I think it's really important. Like, why didn't they keep it there for 200 years, for 120 years? Why haven't they kept it there? Why did it go? Why did it come back? Why is it now come back and you've got all this new age rubbish that comes with it? It shouldn't be that way. Shouldn't be that way. You know, you want open source, true, reverse engineered in tradition and celebration of Tesla. That's why I have the antiques. 120 years, still work, still strong. I've got about 5 of them available right now, ready to ship out to the world. That's what I do. That's one of the things that I do. They're ready to go. I've got some beautiful sets here. I've got this little handheld set, great for traveling. This little one. If anyone's got any questions, fire them over. I've got this little set. IFAS, British engineering, 100, this one's from 1940, so it's 100 years. 100, it's about 100 years, isn't it? No, it's not, it's about 80 years. This is 80 years old, and it still works. And I've got other ones that are 120 years. And so the beauty with all the true technology is you don't have to put in a diagnosis, because the true Rife machine is radio and audio. And I'm not an expert with this stuff, I'm just open to learning. The true Rife machine is radio and audio. This technology is wireless telegraphy. It's wireless telegraphy. This disrupts the digital technology. It works on all things related to, this is a nice larger set that I've got. This is more of a, this would be more of a, what a doctor would have invested in. Something like this. This is the IFAS. These are highly sought after in Australia, the IFAS. This is called, the clue is in the name, Sunco. In fact, this one actually looks more like an old Rife machine. So I'm into the old technology because I'm like, well, this is 120 years strong and it still works. But I don't have to waste my time with a big booklet typing in all these different frequencies. So with a true Rife machine, the true Rife machine will have the idea of a signal generator already in there. All the audios will be good. The human being to research is a man called John Bedini. For the true Rife technology is John Bedini. For Lakhovsky, there's one human being in Croatia or Serbia. The true, wherever the Tesla museum is, there's a gentleman that makes true Tesla reverse engineered items. You'll be on a waiting list to get a true Lakhovsky machine. They're about 20,000 euros, but there's only 2 people in the world that make them. So my answer to that question was own an MWO, a true MWO, own a true Rife machine, and own a true Tesla machine. And if you want to, start collecting them, because they're great things to have. They're great things to have. Most people, and the little ones, I've got this small one here now. My friend's got his. He's got a large set. He's got quite a few sets from me. And then he'll travel with a little set like this, which means that he can put this on the plane with him, and he can go and see his relatives over in Florida. And he's working right now on his relative's ear, because the relative's ear's been all inflamed. And within the last time I spoke to him, it was down by 50% working with this. That's just a story that I heard the other day. I don't make any claims or anything. That's why I love this antique technology, because it's loaded with testimonials from the physician and the chiropractor and the naturopath of that time. Now, what's also beautiful is when you get into the true Lakhovsky wisdom, hi Edmund again, when you get into the true Lakhovsky technology, they're actually, because there's a wider range of field, there's actually this thing called counter space. I was showing it the other day. You know, Parker was showing it the other day. Dr. Parkenstein was showing, if you've got the Tesla machine on, the light bulb will light up, like the wireless light bulb. It will light up. For example, I could show you this now. I can put on the machine, and because I've got a frequency, some of the other glass tubes will light up. You'll see them light up. I could do that. If anyone wants me to do that, just let me know and I can show you what I'm talking about. But when you've got a larger field, so you've got these large antennae, capacitors, you've got these large antennae that are like capacitors, and then you're in this field, and then you've got this fluorescent tube, and you're holding the fluorescent tube in the field that's on, and you can see the tube's lit up. Well, there's this point in between. So, for example, I could have this in the field. I'm going to set my multi-wave oscillator up one day and I'll show you. And I can be in this field, and this will light up. But when I get into the counter space, where there's a point where something's given, this is the whole point. This is like, once you understand metabolism and cellular health, this is it. This is the, I'm really getting it at the moment. There's something that's given, there's something that's received, there's something that's given, something that's received, something that's taken away. I've forgotten it now, but there's something that's given to you. So in that space where there's a counter space, there's something that's given, there's something that's taken away. And the point is like, where does it go to? No, we don't know where it goes to. So there's an element of like, it's a sort of time machine or a hyper-synchronistic machine. Now, how I like to think about this is, have any of you noticed that since the boogeyman happened and the boogeyman had a solution, have you noticed how the solution that came from the boogeyman created a problem? Now, they create the problems, then they provide you the solutions. And that's why I'm very dubious about people that talk about lizard people. I'm going to talk about this again in a minute. What happens with this in the counter space? So you used to think about someone and you'd be like, oh, I was thinking about you today. And then they